Recorded Books presents an unabridged recording of Hell is Empty by Craig Johnson, narrated by George Guidall and directed by Abigail McHugh. The author begins with two epigraphs. The first is a quote from The Tempest, Act 1, Scene 2, by William Shakespeare.
Hell is empty, and all the devils are here.
The next quote that opens this book is from The Inferno, Canto 3, lines 56 and 57 by Dante Alighieri.
I should not have thought that death could ever have unmade so many.
And now, Hell is Empty.
Chapter 1. Didn't your mother ever tell you not to talk with your mouth full? I tried to focus on one of my favorite skies, the $silver one, with the peach-colored banding that seriates into a paler, frosty blue the old-timers said was an omen of bad times ahead. As I stuffed a third of a bacon cheeseburger into Marcel Pop's mouth in an attempt to silence the most recent of his promises that he was indeed going to kill me. At last count he'd made this statement 27 times to me, 8 to other members of the Absaroka County Sheriff's Department, and 17 to Santiago Sancho Sizer Vittoria, who was dragging a few French fries through his ketchup as his eyes stayed trained on a paperback in his left hand. I looked at Sancho. That was 28. The sun reflected through the western window and struck my face like a ray gun. I was tempted to close my eyes and soak in the warmth of the early afternoon, but I couldn't afford the luxury. I hadn't allowed any silverware at the table, and Marcel Pop was manacled, but I still warned him that if he bit either Sancho or me, he'd go without food. The Basco tilted his head from the book. Do dirty looks count? Pop glanced at Santiago, who was watching the other two convicts quietly eating their lunches, and we could only guess what his words would have been as he chewed. No. I placed the rest of the convict's burger on his plate and looked back out the window as the sunshine took another dying shot at my face. Sancho and I had been amusing ourselves by keeping score, and even though the Basco was down by 11, he had made a fourth-quarter comeback with the tirade he'd received as we'd unloaded the transported prisoners at South Fork Lodge in the heart of the Bighorn Mountains. The Basco had apologized for handling Marcel's head into the top of the door while getting him out of the vehicle. I still wasn't sure if it had been entirely innocent. I glanced at Santiago and then risked closing my eyes for just a second. Even with present company, I had enjoyed my own Absaroka burger and fries. South Fork was my favorite of the lodges, with the best menu and a river-stone fireplace in the dining room that owners Holly and Wayne Jones kept roaring when the temperature was under 50 degrees. It was a year-round, full-service lodge, nestled away in one of the south side canyons, with snowmobiling, cross-country skiing, horseback riding, trout fishing, and hunting in season. It was early May, and the summer crowds hadn't arrived yet. With the outside temperature in the high 30s, not including wind chill, I was afraid we still had a few shots of winter left. Despite the weather, there was a comfortable, close quality to the lodge, and I fantasized about reserving one of the rustic cabins by the partially ice-covered creek and calling Victoria Moretti, another of my deputies, to see what she was up to this weekend. Vic had just bought a new house, and she'd invited me and my best friend, Henry Standing Bear, over for dinner tonight. I was still thinking about the cabin when Pop spoke again. I'm going to kill every single one of you motherfuckers. It was a general statement, but he'd been looking at me. 29. Currently, Marcel wasn't a happy camper. I hadn't released either him or the other two murderers from their traveling chains in order to eat. Marcel had already killed 2 Winnemucca, Nevada City policemen and a South Dakota highway patrolman in an attempt to escape a year back. That and his limited vocabulary had endeared him to the entire Absaroka County staff. We would be just as happy to be rid of him when we met up with the Bighorn and Washakie Counties Sheriff's Departments, the FBI, and the Ameritrans van near Meadowlark Lodge in less than an hour. Ameritrans was a private firm that contracted with law enforcement to transport prisoners. But they had no contract with us. I didn't like the fact that they had a
Sample complete. Ready to continue?